Welcome back to D.O.T. University. I'm Ryan, the D.O.T. guy. Today we're bringing you a video to prepare for the upcoming Brake Safety Week that's going to be scheduled by CVSA on August 23rd through the 29th. Now this information we're going to be talking about is relevant regardless of Brake Safety Week. Brakes, what I've discovered is through the years, brakes is one of those important things that maintenance shops across the United States need to focus on. And I want to go through today, take you through brake safety surrounding air brakes, ABS brake systems. I'm even going to talk about some hydraulic brake systems. Now, the focus of the upcoming Brake Safety Week announced by CVSA, they're going to be predominantly focusing on air brake systems. However, during that time frame, they'll be focusing on all commercial motor vehicle sizes. So the question is, are you ready? Is your shop already prepared? Are your technicians and drivers following the correct steps when performing their brake inspections? And are they just adjusting their brakes? If so, you're going to want to stop the adjustment. So you're not going to want to miss this video, so make sure you tune in. Now you can help us out by giving us a good like, hit that button, and subscribe. Make sure you also ring that bell so you can be notified when we have new stuff coming out that can help you and your company stay off the radar. I also want to introduce you to our new podcast that we're doing. It's called the Truck Around and Find Out Podcast. We get together once a week. We release a little bit of recording where we talk about some stuff that we've got going on up here in northern Colorado where we're based at, kind of some things around the industry, things that can help you, and just some general hot topics. One of our focus is going to be careers in the trucking industry. So make sure you tune in, give us a subscribe if you follow podcasts, or if your drivers like to enjoy a good podcast. We'd appreciate if you'd share this information. Check out the Truck Around and Find Out podcast. So before we get started, let's kind of get into just some really quick nomenclature of some air brake systems. So I've got a couple schematics here that we're talking about. This first one that we're looking at, this is going to be a service brake line, okay? And on the second one we have the service brake line, and on the back side of it, this is where we've got the spring brake for the emergency or the parking brake system, okay? So with that being said, if we look at these points, you go through the service, what this is, the air line comes into it, that air line then feeds air in behind this diaphragm. When that diaphragm expands, okay, that presses this paddle forward, which pushes the push rod out. The push rod is then connected to the slack adjuster by a clevis and a pin. Okay, you want to make sure all the parts are there, no loose mounting in any of these parts. Okay, once that slack adjuster moves, okay, that is going to be what is going to rotate the S-cam, and that is going to be what drives the linings up into your brake drum. So this is the basic diagram of how this brake system works. On the other side, same type of thing. Okay, we've got the service side, this front part. The air again will come in behind this diaphragm and push the push rod out, in turn moving that slack adjuster. Again, we need to make sure all the parts and accessories are tight. When you release the air, okay, of the vehicle, what that does is that takes the air out of this chamber, the parking brake chamber, and that'll allow this spring to move out, okay, and that will push the push rod out, giving the vehicle its parking brake system. So you want to make sure that the caging bolt's not engaged. That would disengage this parking brake spring, okay. Other than that, it's kind of the basic nomenclature of how these brakes work. In today's day and age, we're dealing with automatic slack adjusters, okay. Even though an automatic slack adjuster can be adjusted, it is only supposed to be manually adjusted when you first put them on to set the brakes. Other than that, we should not be putting a wrench on those and adjusting them. Manually adjusting an automatic slack adjuster is a violation of the rules, okay, and it also does not assist you in your overall maintenance. Okay, just some real quick serious warning. If you're looking at that brake chamber and you can see that it is corroded or rusted, okay, this is that end cap, okay, where that parking brake spring is. Now, if you were going to hold one of those parking brakes outside, or one of those springs outside of the chamber, they're probably about this big, okay. You can set them on the ground, you could stand on it and bounce, and that thing will barely move at all. But yet it is compressed inside this cap, inside this brake chamber, okay. If it is damaged, like what you see in the picture here from rust and corrosion, or if it has been drugged down the highway and you can look into that and you can see the spring, the last place you want to be is right next to that doing a brake inspection. So if you see one of these brake lights you're going to want to back away from this chamber, get the caging bolt, the proper tools, and you're going to want to secure it. If you don't know how to do that, seek some assistance from somebody in your shop that can show you, because if that spring exits that chamber while you're sitting right next to it, I think they say it comes out at something like 2,500 feet per second. I can think of some things that do that, and that's the last thing you're going to want, is that spring to hit you, because it will cause serious bodily injury or even kill you. So be very, very careful with these. So give them their first visual inspection. If it looks like that chamber is compromised, cage that brake, make sure you get that spring secured, okay? Then pull it off and put a new chamber on your vehicle. Now, what this chart goes through and explains is we have air brake system, and what I'm trying to show is the braking efficiency, which is going to be representative by the red line here on top. That red line doesn't quite bend 100% correctly for me because I can't get the PowerPoint line to react exactly how it is, but it is representative for training for our mindset to say, hey, where are we at? What we're dealing with here is we deal with a Type 30 brake, standard brake chamber. Notice we got round air ports. I don't see a tag on this, so we're dealing with a standard brake chamber. Now, with that being said, it's got 2 inches of movement. So we've got our chart down here. We've got our up to 2 inches a minute, or 2 inches of movement that we can show on there. We've got our braking force line that shows where our maximum braking efficiency is and how that tends to drop off as more push rod starts to travel out and as that slack adjuster starts to break that 90-degree plane. So looking at this, we're dealing with position number 1. We're dealing with about 1 inch of push, okay, on that newer brake system. Position 2, we're right out here. That's going to be about 1.5 inches of travel. So we're just starting to break that 90-degree threshold and hanging out there. But somewhere between, we're talking about preventative maintenance, we want to make sure our brakes are maintaining between position 1 and position 2. When we start to cross position 2, we start to get into that last 1/2 inch. So we're about 1.5 inches or further, okay, where we get up to position 3. That is the DOT cutoff for a Type 30 brake. So now we're braking that plane. We're getting more, okay, than that 2-inch max travel, or we're moving close to that. Now, why I think this is so important from a preventative mindset is while you're doing the inspection, when you're hanging out right in here in this 1.5 to 2 inch plane, you're doing the inspection currently on a cold brake, okay? It's not out operating. As that brake heats up, things tend to expand just a little bit and the movement change. So what we see on a brake that is cold, it's not going to be traveling as far as it would on a warm brake. So for the shop, you might be up to 1 7/8 inches. That's not quite 2 inches. The DOT says that is still good, but once that brake heats up, you might be over that threshold and well into that 2 inches or more. So again, trying to make sure that we're hanging out and we're in that area. Now, as we cross that point level 2, as you can see, as you approach this red zone in point level 3, right, or P3, we're in that complete brake drop off. That is that area where now we cannot apply hardly any, if any at all, pressure to those brake drums. And that's why it's so critical. Once we cross that threshold of going out of adjustment, that driver is literally on borrowed time with that brake. To no braking action is capable of being done while we have a braking event happening. So make sure as you're checking this, we want to stay. Our whole goal of our brake maintenance program is to stay as close to as position 1 as we can, but ideally preventative maintenance wise, we're staying between position 1 and position 2, that 1 inch to about a 1.5 inch marker. As you approach past that 1.5 inches, that last 1/2 inch of travel is something that we need to be concerned about for our overall brake safety. Now, when it comes to your automatic brake adjusters, the brake adjusters themselves do not account for any slack caused by worn or faulty components. So that is why, as that brake drum wears, as the linings get thinner, as the drum thins, as the bushings start to get a little bit of wear and tear on them, that is where that slack adjuster is going to pick up some extra movement. You could get an extra 1.5 inches extra movement just for wear and tear inside that brake. So here you're thinking maybe my slack adjusters aren't functioning correctly because they're junk or they're not properly lubricated. Sure, it could be any of those factors, but it also could be the factors inside. So make sure you're not manually adjusting. Yes, you can take a wrench, you can put an adjustment on there. It's going to sound like you're grinding the gears when you're doing it, and that's because they're not designed or developed for day-to-day inspections like that. But we do want to make sure that you are inspecting them, setting them once you get them fixed. If you go through and do a manual adjustment on an automatic slack adjuster, it only takes 10 10 brake presses. So if you do the inspection and you discover, oh, hey, it's at 2 inches on a Type 30 standard, and let's say you do the typical brake adjustment where you say, hey, let's tighten it all the way down, back it off a half a turn. That ratchets it back in. However, the driver only hits the brakes 10 times, okay? Once he presses that brake pedal 10 times, it ratcheted all the way back out where it was at before you did the brake adjustment. So how far did your driver truly get down the road? Did they even get down the road? Did they even get out of your parking lot by the time they depressed that brake pedal 10 times? So doesn't do you any good to manually adjust without fixing the underlying problem first. Now, you may watch this video and have tons of questions. I just want you to know we'll be a resource for you. If you do need some help with this stuff, feel free to reach out to Front Range Compliance Services. We work nationwide with companies with their maintenance programs, their overall D.O.T., their drug and alcohol. If it's D.O.T. related, it's something that we do. So we try to be a good resource. I built this whole company to kind of help, to be one of those experts that can help people actually in this field. Unfortunately, back in my enforcement days, I met plenty of so-called D.O.T. experts. It turned out that they weren't very close to being an expert at all. So we try to offer those solutions. So you can reach out to us if you do have questions at info@Front Range Compliance. Okay, we'll be happy to answer some questions. If you need deeper help, we can talk about it from there. Other than that, thanks for tuning in on Brake Safety, our video for Brake Safety Week. We hope to catch you on one of the next recordings that we do. Make sure you check out Truck Around and Find Out. Okay, we'll see you on one of the next videos.